We have one last speaker for this evening, and I'd like to invite Megan Mance back to introduce our last keynote speaker. So, hi Megan, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it. And we're so excited to welcome our final keynote speaker today, Mr. Nicolas Chaillan. And Mr. Chaillan, he serves as the Air Force's first Chief Software Officer. And in this role, he's responsible for enabling Air Force programs in the transition to Agile and DevSecOps. And he also works to streamline the adoption of new technologies. He's also the co-lead for the Department of Defense Enterprise DevSecOps Initiative. And he has held positions in both military and federal civilian agencies. And prior to his public service, he was recognized as one of France's youngest entrepreneurs. He's founded over 12 technology companies and has sold over 180 innovative software products to dozens of Fortune 500 companies. So welcome, Mr. Chaillan. I can't think of a better speaker to bookend our program today, and I hope you're able to catch a little bit of the program before you got here, but we really look forward to hearing from you about the Air Force's experience with hybrid cloud.
Thanks, Megan. And can you hear me? Just want to make sure. Awesome. Thank you. And absolutely, I've been able to listen to the last panel. Very interesting discussion, obviously, on containers that touch exactly what we're tackling now with the DoD and Kubernetes and what I'm going to be talking about today a little bit. We only have 20 minutes, so I'm going to try to do my best to give you a little bit of insights as far as what we're building in the DoD. And I'm sharing my screen as well. I assume you can see my screen as well. But just to give a quick background, obviously it's all about timeliness and being able to move and rapidly adapt to challenges. And I think the previous panel did a great job at explaining the value of containers. We piggyback exactly on that. At the same time, we need to work as a team, a pretty large team, and that makes everything easier, right? And at the same time, adding quite a bit of different technologies together, very complex with things we have to bring with us and even to space, and of course, with quite a few sensors. And you can imagine the complexities there as well. All with working with teams across the world and multiple countries when it comes to F-35, for example. So making all this quite simple. When you look at the initiative we created, it's a joint team. I'm the co-lead of the DevSecOps initiative for DoD with DoD CIO. I'm also the Chief Software Officer for the Air Force. It's a kind of an interesting title. I don't think it exists anywhere else. Hopefully it will at some point. Really the role of this initiative is to help teams embrace Kubernetes and containers and the Lego blocks we talked about, and the ability to move to the next generation zero trust / container security behavior detection mindset. And we created this initiative back 18 months ago when I started in DoD. Everything is based on Kubernetes. Wanted to also share the website. We have this software. I have the Mail website that has all the content. So I know I won't have enough time to cover enough of the initiative here in 20 minutes, but on that website, you have the source code repo, you have all the architecture documents, the way we designed the cloud native access point, which is our zero trust stack to access cloud providers, agnostic to the cloud provider, and also on-premise environments. So all that knowledge is public and accessible on the website. The first aspect of what we did is we didn't want to be locked into any cloud provider, and that's really important. When you move fast, you want to move fast, but you also want to make sure it doesn't come at a cost of vendor lock-in. And so we picked Kubernetes, we picked containers, and we started to centrally accredit containers. We have now on the repo, it's called Iron Bank now. We renamed it with a cool fancy logo. And the Iron Bank is now able to centrally accredit about 80 plus containers, soon 170 containers that we centrally assess and approve with commercial products, open source products, working directly with companies to make it an easy way to get accredited across all classification levels, all the way to the highest classification levels in DoD and DoD wide. So for companies, it's an easy way to get their software capability approved, and we have contract vehicle to be able to access and buy the licenses as well. We created 2 teams, and that's really how we wanted to scale. Cloud One and Platform One. Cloud One is accessing Amazon and Azure government clouds. We also have access to C2S, but then we also created Platform One. And so Platform One is the DevSecOps teams that can bring a DevSecOps stack with Kubernetes and a CI/CD pipeline on any environment. And that's on the jet all the way to on-premise cloud providers, Cloud One and C2S, and so on. We created the concept of the Continuous ATO, and really behind that is the concept of accrediting a software factory and a CI/CD pipeline with gates and well-defined testing gate, change management gates, and also the ability to enforce testing. And if it passes the gates and run with our sidecar container security stack, which is our zero trust enforcement stack, we can now accredit DoD-wide and push across classification levels. That's really game-changing for the department. And we released all the reference designs and all the architecture documents on the website as well. We have to train about 100,000 people in a year. So we went obviously with a self-learning capability, trying to find content that's not biased to a specific product. So we partnered with O'Reilly, the books, and the Linux Foundations as well. So when you look at the complexity of containers, and I think the panel that did a great job at explaining some of those problems, we are tackling this at scale by centralizing the assessment of the enterprise containers, particularly the base layer of the containers. So we don't want to be locked in, so we made sure it's compliant with the Open Container Initiative. It's also, we're using Kubernetes, part of the CNCF, the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. And then, of course, we are trying to use the benefits of Lego blocks and being able to swap things around with no downtime, and using the concept of cattle versus pets. And so the concept is really to kill containers as often as possible, to always go back to immutable state and always continuously update so we don't get behind in releases, and always use the latest container images that we accredit centrally in the repo. So teams can now centrally get access to Linux, 16 programming languages, 23 databases, AI machine learning tools, pretty much all the necessary CI/CD development tools, and also, of course, any type of commercial capability in cyber, between static dynamic analysis and so on. Everything is completely automated for us. We use GitOps infrastructure as code. And really what that means is everything is code. To make a change, you don't go in production and make a code change. You go back to code and push that code change, and the production is going to pull from Git to implement that change. It's a pull, not a push. And so we're really embracing the GitOps model. What's interesting is when you realize the complexity of a DevSecOps pipeline, you have all these different tools you have to update and maintain on different clouds, different classification levels. You don't want to have any drifts between environments. You don't want to get behind. So what we ended up doing is recontainerizing everything to make sure that we can centrally update, centrally assess, and then run anywhere, whether it's on the jet or on the weapon system itself, all the way to the clouds, including the classified air-gap clouds as well. The layers are interesting. When you think of layers, we can accredit per layer, and that's really exciting because we can swap layers and move very fast. Obviously, you have the infrastructure layer, that's the cloud providers, the federated clouds, all the classified clouds. Then we bring Kubernetes. We have multiple products that can bring Kubernetes compliant clusters, whether it's Red Hat OpenShift or VMware or Day2IQ, Rancher, Oracle, or Amazon and Azure, and Google, of course, with GKE. And then you have the CI/CD pipelines with 172 containers we centrally accredit. And of course, we move to microservices and cutting monolithic application into smaller microservice designs. And that is using the service mesh for the traffic between containers. Not going to get into all the tech, but the benefit here for the application teams is that they only have 10% left of the NIST controls to implement to succeed at implementing the NIST cybersecurity framework. So really a lot of inheritance of the controls. So that's really fast tracking that ability to deploy fast. The Platform One team provides kind of these services to all of these different teams, whether it's a program office, whether it's in an innovation team. Other agencies are also using the containers, whether it's the VA or OMB or DHS. Many agencies come and pull the containers from our repo of centrally accredited and signed bits and containers. And really that enables all these teams across the US to focus on their mission instead of spending a year to build their own platform and maintain that and accredit and assess all these tools and all these Lego blocks. They can just pick the one that makes sense for them and move fast together. And we can centrally get everything accredited as well. When you think of the benefit of having a central team, we wanted to make sure it was very much like a company, right? We see the DoD programs as the customers, and we're not trying to have a one-size-fits-all approach. So they can use as much or as little from the Platform One services that they want. Repo One is a repo of the source code. It's accessible. You have the link here with all the code, infrastructure as code, Kubernetes, everything is there. Then Iron Bank is the repo of the binaries, the containers that are signed. That's where you go download the binaries for the containers. And then we also built all the automation, all the push button deployment, all the Terraform scripts, infrastructure as code is there with multiple distributions. So teams can just take that and run with it, not have to re-harden, re-secure, rescan. Everything is already there, and we get it directly from the companies. So we're always up to date and always streamlining that process. So companies can directly push the code to the repo and not have to send it to 50 different people across DoD. What's interesting as well is the last two services that are the most important are the Polybus and the Big Bang. The Polybus is a multi-tenant environment. So you can think of it as a multi-tenant stack that's already accredited, and teams just are going to go and consume and use the pipeline at multiple classification levels. And that's great for smaller teams, for training, great when you don't have specific tools you need and you just want to use an existing stack. But then we have the Big Bang, which is really a dedicated DevSecOps stack where people can just deploy the stack and run with it and have their custom tools, new containers accredited if need be, and really build their custom CI/CD pipeline based on their mission needs and at whatever classification level they need to be able to deploy to production. What's interesting also, I think, for this audience, back to the discussion with the panel, is what we built, kind of replacing what you guys on the .gov side would call the TIC, or on the DoD side, the CAP, the Cloud Access Point. We completely redesigned and called it the Cloud Native Access Point, the CNAP, and really it's designed to be cloud agnostic. It's internet facing, but it's implementing zero trust with a real zero trust stack, meaning device enforcement and the saying of the device state prior to enabling the connectivity to happen with SDP, but also tying back to the user role and the user identity, compounding that risk to define what kind of whitelist the user gets access to based on the device state and based on the user role within the organization to whitelist access to resources. Whether they're on the cloud or on premise, the stack is designed to be agnostic and be able to run anywhere. And we use automation to deploy it on any environment. So very flexible to deploy a new CNAP. We have all the source code, of course, and we use a lot of commercial products to do this. Of course, we didn't reinvent a zero trust tech stack. A lot of it is either open source or commercial products. We have the full diagram on that link, so it's on the website as well. So you'll see that there as well. The training options were critical. We have 100,000 people we have to train, so we created training videos. We also put a lot of training in DAU, the Defense Acquisition University, with the DevSecOps Academy. We built a learning hub with self-learning onboarding that was launched this month. And of course, we have training sessions, whether it's 1 day, 3 days, 6 weeks, but really the 2 months onboarding that has a full MVP. So teams can define what the minimal viable product is, and we pair programming. We do pair programming with the teams. We put Platform One teams inside of the development teams to help deliver the first MVP as well. What's also interesting is, of course, our managed services. We have the diode, of course, with Amazon to push to the high side with classified clouds, so we can push containers straight from one class to secret and TS environments. And then we, of course, have a lot of emphasis on pen testing. So we have contract vehicles to do continuous pen testing of the applications and the platforms that we maintain as well. A critical piece of Platform One and why we've been so successful in adoption and scaling across DoD, and we have now the largest DoD program, saving about 100 years of program plan time in 1 year. So what that means is we save an average of 18 months of program time for every 5 years of program plan time by moving to DevSecOps, both because of the Continuous ATO and the continuous ability to deliver small incremental changes of code and capability to the warfighter. So really timeliness and continuous engineering and continuous delivery of capability has been game changing. And so the DevSecOps contract vehicles are also enabling teams to come to Platform One, and if they need cloud services, compute storage, if they need licenses of tools, if they need talent, whether it's like we talked about in the panel, data specialists, if they need DevSecOps engineers, site reliability engineers, developers, whatever the case may be, they can get the work done usually within 30 days and really tie that back to the continuous ATO of Platform One and get access to a dedicated DevSecOps managed environment very rapidly without having to rebuild anything from scratch. So that's a great way to fast track the access to DevSecOps. I'm gonna skip a couple of slides, but what's really critical here when we move to that automation for us, because we have so many customers, right? So many DoD programs across classification levels. So you can think of all these containers, all these environments, Kubernetes running, all these tools, containers self-update. So that streamlines, no more patch management, right? If I need to update RHEL or update, GitLab or whatever product that we use, we can do an update of the container, and it spreads across all the deployments across all the different enclaves, and then we use the diode to push it to the classified clouds as well. But the key aspect is the automation. No drift between environment, immutable, replicable, automated, reducing the attack surface because we don't have humans in production typing stuff. It's all back in code, making code change, which is then passing the pipeline, and then the production stack will pull from Git. So it's a pull, it's not a push. So we really mitigate a lot of the risk by implementing Zero Trust with device enforcement, user ALBAC, ABAC access, of course, single sign-on with a CAC or PIV authentication. We also have MFA options as well. So we really try to streamline the stack. For example, we have a container that has a single sign-on authentication mechanism that we give to any team that can consume that and not have to reinvent and rebuild the wheel when it comes to doing a single sign-on, whether it's with SAML or OpenID or OAuth or whatever tech stack they want to use. They have multiple options using Keycloak, which is open source. And that's what we use on Platform One. That's really streamlines the access to all these capabilities that we can centrally accredit, centrally push, centrally update, and also making sure there's no drift between all these environments. For people that don't know about GitOps, I think it's something you need to look into. it's really the evolution of infrastructure as code. Everything is in Git, networking change, configuration change, even documents, STIGs, and all the documentation of the RMF and NIST cybersecurity framework is inside of Git. We use Argo CD to pull from Git so we don't push. So our CI/CD pipelines don't have access to the production workload. So there's no keys. They only, the production stack pulls from Git, and it's not a push. Again, the Continuous ATO is going to be game changing. We're working with NIST to release publications to make that a broader concept in DoD, but it's a very different from fast track / accelerated ATO that we see everywhere else. The concept here is to accredit the factory and the gates within the factory, the testing gates, the cyber gates, the change management gates, how many eyes on codes you need to merge the code into the master branch to push to production. All those concepts are part of the accreditation of the process of the factory and the pipeline. And of course, we accredit the platform running Kubernetes with our Zero Trust stack. And both make that if you're passing the gates of the pipeline, the software coming out as a container can run in production and is already accredited by passing the pipeline. We also accredit the teams using the platform, the development teams and the cyber teams. So they are aware of insider threat risk and get the training they need to avoid bypassing or trying to cheat the system and understand the importance of the trust all the Zero Trust stack baked into the system. And that's a necessary piece of the accreditation to make sure that the people are doing what needs to be done when it comes to insider threat and things like that in terms of change management and all those things. So that's really something we're pushing now DoD wide with the Continuous ATO. So Platform One has the kind of the first DoD wide Continuous ATO, so we can push software across DoD, across classification levels by really enforcing these cyber gates. If you have questions, I know we don't have obviously a lot of time, but we do have everything on the website. We do have this email, usaf.cso@mail.mil. Always don't hesitate to reach out to us. The source code is open source, so anyone can go and use the source code and consume that and work with us to make it better. It's not perfect. It's never perfect. We always try to improve. But again, the entire stack is based on Zero Trust and behavioral detection and not just CV signatures. So we're a little bit ahead of the rest of the industry when it comes to cyber. So thanks for the time.
Mr. Chaillan, thank you so much. And if you might indulge me, I think I just have maybe one question for you.
Sure, of course.
And yeah, and you know, obviously the Air Force is very mature in terms of their IT architecture. You've done a great job with the Cloud One platform, and you spoke to your ability to kind of scale the DevSecOps piece. But you know, just curious, we have a lot of other federal agencies, you know, that are on the webinar today, and just curious if you might have, you know, some pieces of advice for them as they move through their IT modernization and cloud journey, or other best practices you might want to share quickly.
Yeah, I think the key is to make sure that you find the right team. So what I did is when I started in the Air Force, there were 20+ teams building different platforms, different technology stacks. I went and kind of visited pretty much everybody and kind of picked the top 3, 4 and merged it into Cloud One, what became Cloud One and Platform One. And so now we have kind of the best talent to tackle the problem and make sure we can provide that as a turnkey managed service to the rest of the teams, so they can refocus their time and energy at building their mission software. So one is really having a strong enterprise capability, but it should never be a one-size-fits-all. You have to bring options. You cannot just have one option ever in anything. So people are going to say, well, we only support Kubernetes, but Kubernetes is multiple products, and ensure the abstraction of the stack, ensure that we don't get locked in. And so that's really has been a great enabler for us to move faster together. Also, don't reinvent the wheel. So if you see containers that we have on the repo, use that. Don't rebuild stuff from scratch. We have all the automation code. If you want to use OpenShift or VMware or whatever product, we have the automation on the source code repo. So feel free to use it and consume it and push the code back to us. It's a two-way street. We made it open source so we can have these kind of engagements with the rest of the federal government, but we also have companies using the stack. So that's when you know you're doing something right. On the financial healthcare side of the commercial side. So again, we have 80 plus companies pushing containers. The key is really to bring options. I think that's the #1 rule, is never have a one size fits all.
Sure, and perhaps one more question that came in for you. Someone was curious how the continuous ATO is going to impact third-party auditing potentially, and how that's done. Do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, so I think that's also the difference with the continuous ATO. That's a concept provided on the GFE, on the government furnished enclave. So in effect, the government is accrediting the stack, and we are now using a third party to do that. We obviously have contractors on contract to help with the accreditation, but in effect, it is not a third party assessment. So for the company using our stack and going through the pipeline, in effect, it's the government accrediting you and giving you a certificate to field for your software. So it's ready to be used in DoD use cases. And for the government and the rest of the teams that wants to consume the containers, they inherit the reciprocity with my team DoD wide. And so in effect, we are the accrediting body. And so for companies that have software capabilities that they want to push to the DoD, it's a great way to share your products, get them accredited DoD wide. It's a 2 weeks to 4 weeks time frame. It's very fast. We don't need FedRAMP. We don't need anything else. It's just pure containers assessment. And then we accredit your stack. There's an onboarding guide on the website. So if you have a container you want to get approved for DoD use, you can just follow the onboarding guide. And usually within 2 to 4 weeks, you get that approved. And now you don't have to go through a third party. You don't have to do anything else. You get your approved status. And now anyone can consume it and buy your license. Of course, they still need to buy your license to consume your product. But if it's open source, of course, then someone can just use it.
Great. Well, thank you, Mr. Chaillan. I think we're about to wrap up here. I just want to be mindful of everyone's time, and we're so grateful to have you on the program today, and hope to have the opportunity to continue to collaborate with you and your team.
Of course, absolutely. Thank you for having me, and have a good day.
Great. And at this point, I just have a couple of quick final comments that I'd like to share with the folks that are still here today, and really appreciate you being here and your participation. I want to again thank our event partners, Dell Technologies and Karasoft, Google Cloud, McAfee, and Oracle. They've been tremendous to work with throughout this event planning process. And I just quickly want to put in a plug for some of our other upcoming HSDF events. We have 2 more symposiums later this year, one on transforming the government mission through artificial intelligence, and then we also have an upcoming Border Security Symposium, October 28th, that we host in conjunction with former Chief David Aguilar from GSIS. And it's been a tremendous event to really focus on the role of technology in supporting the border mission. And we continue with our regular series of roundtable discussions. Upcoming, we have Border Patrol Chief Rodney Scott and Miss Melissa Ho, who is the director for the DHS Silicon Valley Innovation Program, as well as Miss Victoria Newhouse with the Transportation Security Administration. So those are open to our members. And I just wanted to emphasize too that, myself and my colleague Chris Long with CPPI, we're always looking for opportunities to collaborate and to get your feedback on programming that might be of interest. And so if you'd like more information about us or would like to partner with us, I just wanted to make our contact info available here. So please consider reaching out to us, and I hope everyone has a great evening, and I think we are just in time for happy hour, thankfully. So thanks again, everyone, for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed the program.